Welcome to Recruitment Mindset. Our mission is to serve you with bold conversations about business, recruitment, leadership, and personal development. Open your mind and prepare for discovery, creation, and transformation. And here's your host, Ross Cunningham.
Chill, man.
Right. I'm super excited! We got Scott!
You're off your head.
Aye, typical Scotsman, what can I say? Oops. All right, here we go. So hi and welcome to the Recruitment Mindset podcast. I am super excited to announce that we have Scott McArthur on the show, and I've been waiting a very long time to get him on this show, and I'm super excited to have him here. We're going to be speaking about all things workplace of the future, and a couple of key points that we're going to discuss are as follows. Scott, you want to share the key points that cover this?
Yeah, I'm going to look at why today is the time to be thinking about the workplace of the future. I think the future is, we're on what I call the edge of next, Ross. Oof. Right? We're right on the edge of something. So that's the first thing. Yep. Second thing I'd like to speak to your guys about is what's called scalable efficiency. Now, that sounds a bit wanky. Sorry, but I'll explain what I mean by that.
Just a bit or quite a bit?
Quite a bit. Normally, when somebody uses phrases like that, it means they don't understand something, right? So I've got to dig myself out of that hole. All right, I'll try my best.
I'm an expert on that, by the way, saying things I don't understand.
I've heard that, and then the third thing I'd like to talk about is some speculation around the impact of COVID-19. We're recording this in April 2020, so we need to talk about it.
Absolutely, it's good. Okay, Scott, well, before we start, I just want to make an introduction. So, Scott, you've done a lot of speaking throughout your career, and you've been heavily involved in setting the benchmark with organisations. You know, you've been involved on a consultancy basis, supporting companies like Virgin, Amazon, KPMG, just to name drop a few of these large corporates. And I would just like to quickly ask, whilst you were making big influence and change with these businesses, what was the key takeaway with each business that you've dealt with or shared your journey with?
Well, I think and it's not particularly positive for us, but it's true. After doing, I think it was over 200 businesses I've worked in. Yeah. And you start to realise that, well, you're a Scotsman, I can say this, we're all Jock Tamson's bairns. you're a covet, Scott. But all the issues that I've seen throughout the years and across the industries, they're nearly always the same. Yeah. Right. Companies will tell you they're unique, and they'll tell you they've got a different why or a different whatever. The reality is that the issues, the more you do it, the more you see the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. What those same things are, of course, are very complex, but there's a mystery about companies in a lot of people's heads. Yep. There's no need for that at all.
Why do you think that is, and why do you think there's a mystery? Why is that?
Well, it's probably because if you think about it, if you're looking at, quite topical, Richard Branson. Yep. You've got him up on a pedestal. He's 250 companies. He's a guy who came from not quite nothing, but virtually nothing. Yep. Was dead lucky with discovering or giving Mike Oldfield a deal, and suddenly the whole thing took off, and now he's in danger of committing commercial suicide. But I think when you look at that from the outside, particularly if you just leave school or uni or whatever, you think, oh my goodness, how are they in that position? You do put them up on a level, but the reality you very, very quickly get to is, particularly when you're in consulting, is that they're just the same as everybody else. They're not. I've never met anybody. I mean, I originally used to go in and be completely starstruck. Yeah. And I'd be like, oh, he's a director, or she's a chief executive, and it'd be like, oh gosh, spend 10 minutes with them, getting them to do some presentation skills, and you'll soon find out that they're just as shitting themselves as anybody else. Yeah. They just might hide it better, but nevertheless, they're just the same.
It's quite funny, Scott, because I can share that feeling. I remember many moons ago when I had a meeting with WSP down in London and Canary Wharf, and I was absolutely shitting myself. Yeah. Didn't know what to expect, didn't know how to present. And I think just as through time goes and experience goes, you tend to start adapting. And I think if you've just been true self and just been authentic and honest, if you've got a problem you can solve, then that's enough for them in terms of that presentation.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that brings us probably on to workplace of the future. I'm really excited about this, Scott. Being a recruiter, I'm always looking at trying to engage with many individuals in different ways and how we can actually, I don't know, come up with some innovative ideas that make a difference. And I know these are probably sounding like buzzwords at the moment, but I really do have a passion for people, tech and business. And I just want you to share with us today your 3 concepts on the workplace of the future. Do you want to start with the first one, please?
Right, well, I think normally, right, do you remember Tomorrow's World, Ross?
Yes, love that.
Right? 1978, that was obviously -5 at the time, but in 1978, they did this predictions for what it would be like in 2020.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the things they predicted was that we would all be going to work with rocket packs on. Right? It's not happened really, has it? Right?
Nope.
So predicting the future is difficult and is pretty much embarrassing most of the time. Right? So I don't class myself necessarily as a futurist, but what I do keep an eye on are trends.
Yes.
Trends are not made up. There is some speculation, but you're not going to get crashing trends particularly often. So there's 3 areas that I happen to have worked in, 2 of them, that I think are really interesting. And there's some maths here, but I'll explain it.
Yep.
And understanding that is absolutely critical. So we've got what they call exponential growth of artificial intelligence technologies, right?
Yep.
Now, I'm not going into what AI is and what it isn't and all the speculation and all the waffle and myth, but what that exponential means is worth explaining.
Yes.
Because what if I put it, there's a guy called Ray Kurzweil who's one of the sort of heroes in this area, and he came up with this, but I'll contextualize it for everybody. We think in linear steps. So we think, tomorrow I'm going to get up in the morning, going to do some work, have my lunch, feed the boys, do some work, feed the family, watch telly, go to sleep. That's how we think, right? So if I took 30 linear steps from where I'm sitting right now in my study in the Cotswolds, I'd end up out the back of the house in our garden.
Yeah.
Right? If I took 30 exponential steps from where I'm sitting just now, so 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, keep going for 30 steps, I would take 1 billion steps. That's enough steps.
I get my head around that.
Sorry?
I'm trying to get my head around that.
Just bear with me.
Yep.
That's enough steps to walk round the world.
Wow.
20 times. Right?
Yep.
And if your listeners don't believe me, Google average step length, Google distance around the earth, do the maths. Right?
Wow.
Right? Now, AI is going at that pace.
Yes.
Right? That means it's humanly not possible to keep up.
Yep.
We can't. So all these people who are telling you that they can predict what's going to happen in 10 years' time don't know what they're talking about because they can't. Yep. It's pure science fiction, right? But in the next 5 years, you can start to guess at what's going to happen. And this might surprise your listeners. What is going to happen is the end of digital.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. Digital's got probably a maximum of 5 years. The reason for that is it keeps growing so quickly and the processors have to go faster and smaller. And mathematically, you get to molecular size within the next 2 or 3 exponential steps. The end of digital. So what's next? That's happening. That's not, I'm not speculating.
Yep, it's happening.
That's going to happen, right? That means what's next? We're going to want to keep developing. What's next? Well, what's next, and this is where it's a shock, is analog.
Yep.
We're going back to analog. And how to explain that? And I know we've only got half an hour here, but do you know when you get pixelization on a picture when you zoom into it?
Yes.
That's zeros and ones. That's digital.
Yep.
Right? You've got a 0 there and a 1 there. The closer they go, it gets blurry. Good Scottish word, right? With analog, the further in you go, it measures all the bits in between.
Yeah.
That's analog. That's where the future of that technology is going to go. So that's AI, right? Absolutely astonishing. But biotech, looking at nanocomputing, all that stuff is going to be about biology. And there's already been a study by the new scientists looking at skills required in the scientific field.
Yep.
For the first time in more than that, 30 odd years, top of the list, biology.
Yeah.
Who would have predicted that?
It's incredible.
Well, it's amazing. So in the recruitment business, mate, look out for graduates from the biology world. That is absolutely racing certainty.
I'm going to use a favourite word that you love here, Scott. I might pivot my business in that direction. How does that sound?
But there's already evidence it's happening, Ross. So it really is amazing how that's happening, right? The second one is biotech itself, right? So the biological implications of all this other stuff that's happening, that's not happening exponentially. That's happening 3 times exponentially. Now, I can't even do the maths on that. That must be going like to Mars and back 100 times. I mean, I can't even do the maths. It's right. And what's happening there, and this is where, again, very few companies have got this in their heads. Have you ever heard of CRISPR?
I haven't actually, no.
Right.
Just elaborate, please.
Don't worry about that. I won't even bother you about what it means, but CRISPR is the way we can manipulate genetic material.
Right, okay.
Right? And 10 years ago, if you were looking at a worm or a bug or a fly or something, it would cost you, I'm slightly making this up, but say $500,000.
Yeah.
Look at the DNA of a fly or a bug.
Yeah.
Right? And you'd have 40 or 50 people working on it. You go onto Amazon, and if you don't believe me, guys who are listening, go onto Amazon, type in CRISPR, and you'll see genetic manipulation kits on Amazon for less than 200 quid.
Wow.
Right? You've got people all over the world doing this right now in their garages, designing genomes.
Wow.
Right? For me, it's like the artists of the future are there right now. It's like 20 years ago, there was Steve Jobs and Wozniak and all these guys with the tech. The next Jobs and Wozniak are in a garage somewhere playing with CRISPR. It's unbelievably exciting.
Wow.
It's also quite scary.
I did take a deep breath there. You know that I'm a big passion for tech and AI and stuff like that, but that is quite terrifying as well.
There's a Netflix.
This is happening in people's garages now.
In garages, they're not even scientists. A lot of them, So it is literally like Seattle in the 80s and the 90s, with bands coming together and forming a new music movement. It's the same sort of thing.
Wow.
It's amazing. And there's a Netflix, if anyone's interested in knowing more about it, there's a Netflix documentary about it called Unnatural Selection. And
of that?
Yeah, and these people are not role models, right? So it is not, there's a lot of danger here, but it's so exciting. If you can come away from the fears that we have, it's so exciting, the changes that are going to happen in that space. That's the second one. And the third one, which I don't know much about, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, is nanotechnology.
Yeah.
And I came across, there's 2 aspects. There's a friend of mine works at Bristol University. She's a professor there. I met her when I did my first TEDx. And she is working on robots that can be injected into the blood. They can sniff out pre-cancerous cells and can kill them.
Wow.
There's 30 laboratories in the world doing this with little nanobots. There's going to be 2 or 3 Nobel Prizes in the next 10 years. We're going to get cancer, at least most of the cancer we're going to get because of these people. So that area is also rocketing. So the 3 areas, AI, biotech, nanotech.
So do you think we are machines of the future then? Is that what you're saying here, Scott?
We already are.
Yeah.
You and I are wearing specs. I mean, we are already, robot, we're humans, but we're cyborgs. That's the word I was looking for.
Do you know something? Can I add to that? It's quite strange because I remember something when I started off in this recruitment journey. I remember being on a train in Edinburgh going to work, and I always remember everybody was sitting there conversing, having a chat, reading their papers, all these types of things. And now when you go on a train in this day and age, nobody's even looking at each other anymore.
Yeah. It's interesting.
That's like, so I feel it's a wee bit alarming actually.
Well, we'll maybe give you some a way of reframing that. Which maybe might help you think about it in a different way.
Thank you.
There's a picture at Chambers Street in Edinburgh. The National Museum of Scotland.
Yep, love it.
There's a picture in there, and I can't remember. I think it's on the 5th floor, so near the top. And it's 5 teenagers sitting on a wall. right?
Yep.
And they're reading newspapers.
Yep.
And the quote underneath it says, "Isn't it terrible how the children of today are so distracted by newspapers?"
Oh, wow.
Right? So none of this fear, this fear we have is a natural fear.
Yeah.
And in some respects, it's important.
Yeah.
But actually, there's nothing new. There was a book in the 12th century written by a Buddhist monk saying how terrible books were because it allowed young monks to study. So this has all happened before, right?
I know that with your scientific experience and knowledge, I know like the reptilian side of your brain, that flight or fight.
Yeah.
That theory, I quite think about that a lot when I'm speaking to individuals and businesses when it comes to like proposition, because one thing that recruiters are shit hot at doing is they can be very good influencers, but actually it's not always the best way to actually sell a product or a service. You've got to let them find the journey through the value, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, the way I frame that, Ross, is I say you can either persuade somebody to buy, or you can teach them to buy.
Yeah, it's good.
I would rather teach them.
Love that. I really love that.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm going off on a tangent, but that's the way I would frame that, and it's powerful.
Yeah. Okay. Super. So there's something that you mentioned in some of your talks. I was really quite fascinated with your TED talk that you did in 2019. And one of the things that you mentioned, and this kind of fits in with this workplace of the future, was weapons of mass distraction. I thought that was very clever. Can you just tell a wee bit about that piece before we move on to your second point? Because I love that.
Well, having worked in technology for the best part of 10 years and in companies like IBM, Fujitsu, Atos, etc., they are all experts at getting your attention.
Yes.
Right. They like, in Facebook, you can keep scrolling forever and all. I don't want to go into that in detail because people have done it better than me. Right. Yeah. But what I realised with that is that they're so good at getting their attention, they've got it. Right. Yep. So it's almost like it's been weaponized. Their capabilities have been weaponized, and of course we're just human beings, so we respond to that, and we're, sorry, I'm bobbing my head. Doesn't work very well on radio. We just keep scrolling through the pages. So that's been they're basically they're taking our attention, and they're taking it, for me, without our permission. Because I mean, I don't mind being influenced. I don't mind, maybe on Netflix. Although Netflix and Amazon have never recommended any of my favourite albums or films to me, so there's something weird about it. Anyway,
but this is a dopamine kick you're talking about, isn't it?
In a pseudosciencey type way, But it is that. But it's not just that. It's also just it's easy.
Yeah,
it's just easy. And people like easy.
Yeah.
And it used to be, and I mean, I'm not saying, I love libraries, and I think we should preserve our libraries, but when you enter the library, you'd have to get in, so you need permission to get in. You've got to be a member, then you've got to know your way about the library, then you've got to know how to use the index cards and all that. That's all gone now, so now we just got all this stuff coming at us.
Yeah.
It's like a fire hydrant exploding in our faces every morning when we're waking up. And that's why I call them weapons of mass distraction.
And the thing is, Scott, something that I love, I think it was the famous Albert Einstein. He said, logic will take you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. I just love that. But also, that's quite scary when you think about it.
If you look at, there's a guy called Harris does some research into Nobel Science Prize winners.
Yep.
And he found that the data's a wee bit old now. It's about 10 years, 20 years old, sorry. But he found between 50 and 70% of them came up with the idea that won them the Nobel Science Prize through pure luck.
Yep.
How do you get lucky? You meet more people, you spend time with different people, you get creative. That's how you get lucky. So there's nothing new in this. There's nothing new in this.
I love that. And that probably sort of rolls on to the second point. Now, one of my favourite books before we go there is Scale Up. Like, I just love that business book as I read. And this part you're going to be speaking about next, scalable efficiency.
Yeah.
Try and make me more efficient, please. I'd love to scale more efficiently.
Well, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll discover that I was born in Lanark, which is a little town in Lanarkshire, near the...
Not too far from me, sir.
No, it won't be, no. near the sort of the historical industrial heart of Scotland, ripped to bits by Thatcher and her friends. But and what else happened in Lanark? There was a wee place called New Lanark connected to it, which is where the likes of David Dale worked. It doesn't matter who he was. There was an Englishman, a Scotsman, and a Welshman that were involved in it. And they came up with two things. One was urban design, so how to create a village, how to build a town for an industry, which is now everywhere. You've got like Bourneville and all these other places in the UK, but they've got them all over the world. But the second thing that they did was they looked at welfare and the impact of welfare and numbers on efficiency. Yeah. And they found if you had lots of people, you could produce more than having lots of one people. So the more, the more people you have, the more you can produce. That's why businesses do it. That's why the outcome of any bigger business is to have scalable efficiency. So the bigger we get, the more efficient we get, the more we can produce, right? Yeah. That's the model that Ford used to design his company at the end of the beginning of the last century. 2 centuries ago, getting old. But now we're having to think about it again because, and this is where, I'm not going to talk about COVID yet. I'll come to that later, but companies are suddenly finding that it's a challenge to get scalable efficiency. How do we do it? Because people want to work in the gig economy, which means they have different jobs. How are we going to get them to be part of the gang to produce this product if they're not employed by us, if they're an agent or they're a temporary resource? How do we get them engaged so we still get scalable efficiency? And the challenge or the sort of unintended consequence of people coming together is it's created a lot of waste. Yeah. Right? So at a very superficial level, we gossip, we go out for a fag, we come into work with hangovers, all that stuff that's unintended. Yep. Yeah. And the other thing that's happened, and this is really, I think this is really important, even before COVID. This is one of the things I talk about. Yeah. We've created a landscape that's almost infected by something that's damaging it. And let me tell you how I came to that conclusion, because it wasn't just off the top of my head. Have you heard, you know who Warren Buffett is, yeah? Yeah, of course. Yeah. You want to quickly explain that for the listeners? Warren Buffett's one of the most successful investors in human history. Yeah. Him and his partner are utterly amazing, and they're as active in their 90s as they were at any time in their career. Unbelievable. Yeah. And I saw him speak, and he's not a great speaker. He's an okay speaker. But at the end, one of the audience asked him a question. I wish I could say it was me, but it wasn't me. Somebody asked him, what's the biggest, this is 5 years ago, so this is not old, right? What's the biggest problem in business today? And in a flash, he said this. He said, it's people checking people. If you Google that, you won't find anybody accepting my stuff, but it wasn't my idea, right? It was Warren Buffett. And that's what's happened in businesses. You've got all these businesses drowning in KPIs. Golden KPI. Well, that's my one. I'll come on to that. You're stealing my end point here. So you've got that all over businesses. You've got departments with the most hideous names like human capital, right? You've got people obsessing about return on investment on things that you can't measure, for God's sake, right? And I think that is a big issue. And it's almost like, when you have Windows on your laptop for a while, sometimes you've got to refresh it, reboot it. Yep. I think we have to reboot our organizations and think what's actually important. And the one that I did only used to talk about one, I now talk about two, right? Mm-hmm. I used to say the most important resource, given the weapons of mass distraction and other things, is our time. Time well spent, right? Yeah. So if anything you do, including this podcast, isn't time well spent, guys, switch it off. Send Ross a tenner, then switch it off, right? Right? But the second one that I think is quite important now, and I've been playing with this for a while, and I got that. Do you know what? Time well spent came from a guy called Tristram Harris, incidentally, who's a software engineer, terrific guy. Yep. Brilliant thinker. Did a brilliant TED talk recently. But the second one, and I don't know the source of this because there's been a number of people claimed it, so I'm just going to say it was me. And it's this. Your business should have another KPI, and that other KPI should be this: return on humanity. Oh, wow. Right? Now, I was talking about this before COVID. I'm even more convinced that those two KPIs can form a foundation for a business to thrive. It's really good, Scott. I was reading an article, PwC, I don't know if you've seen it, The 4 Worlds of Work in 2030. Have you seen that? No, I haven't. No.
No, and it talks about, you know, the red world being about innovation, ruling, and then the blue world is all about the sort of white collar, the corporates ruling, and in the green world it's more sort of ethical and so forth. And these 4 steps is a bit like the seasons. You know, we go through these seasons of changes, just like in a year or like in 10 years, and it's quite fascinating that you mentioned earlier about exponential movement. You know, the pace it is going with tech, with people, with business, with thinking, critical thinking. It's just mind-blowing, mind-boggling.
No, it is. You've always got to be slightly curious about reports from companies like PwC. I have great respect for them.
Yes.
I've worked with them many times. But their thought pieces are always linked to something they're selling.
Yeah, of course.
Right, so there's a good little mental models, but I would always suggest people go to the academics rather than to the corporates for that. But anyway,
right, that's a nice balanced view there. I like that, academics and corporates. I'll say both. It's that's
you should have an open mind, Ross, but not so open that your brain doesn't pop out.
Scott, when I got you in the show, it popped out already. Oh, superb.
Here's one that I worked with earlier. Hey.
There's definitely, honestly, Scott, there's definitely 2 takeaways for me on this. That Golden KPI, I did chuck that in there because I actually did a wee bit of research on you prior to you coming on the show. And I love that. And I will send that in the link to all the listeners. It's absolutely fantastic and they should watch it. And the weapons of mass disruption. Man, I'll be taking that into workplaces and using that, if you don't mind, because I think it's a fantastic quote. And actually, that's what it's like. There's that much disruption in a workplace. I don't want to use the word disruption because it's not a word you enjoy, but certainly is a lot of disruption at the moment. With COVID, with social media, just with people actually connecting and actually just sitting speaking like human beings, that humanity piece. Yeah. So these are really great points you bring on to the show today, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And that brings us on to the buzzword of the century. COVID-19.
Yeah. COVID-19, yeah.
You want to tell us your sort of feelings around COVID-19 in line with workplace of the future, please?
Right. Well, clearly, pandemics are not unexpected. There's a lot of things in the media saying this was unexpected. It was not unexpected. Every 10 years, there's been something like this has happened. It's just that this particular one is transmittable via, fluids. It's only 0.3 mortality rate, so thank goodness it's not SARS, which is 60%. So we're actually quite lucky that it's that. But the impact, it was not expected in terms of how the world has responded to that and how people are now thinking more about different things for the first time. Yeah. And there's a phrase that is overused in science fiction. I'm a big science fiction fan, but you read a lot about the new world order.
Yes.
Well, I think there could be some sort of new work order.
Love this.
As a consequence of this. And what do I mean by that? Well, I don't think, like some people, for example, people are saying we're all going to be working virtually from now on.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
No.
That's a completely naive and pretty stupid statement because human beings are social animals. We need to be in groups. And in fact, thing with Foster, the famous writer Foster, I've forgotten his name, Timmy Foster, wrote a book called The Machine Stops in 1909, right? Wow. Predicting that if technology kept going the way it was going, we're all going to end up living in pods, not talking to each other, and that there would be a rebellion against that to get back to humanity, right? Wow. So we've always known that when people are in prison and they get put into isolation, we do it for a reason. Yeah. It's horrible, right? Yeah. So what will happen? I think what is already happening is the technology has been improved because more folk are using it, right? Yeah. So Zoom, we're using Zoom today, is so much better than it was 6 months ago. And in 12 months, Zoom will be superb because they're learning from all of us using it. Right,
so that's as well, which makes a difference.
Yeah, and that's a change, right? That's a change, right? And that'll definitely happen. That's not a prediction in the future. That's just going to happen, right? Second thing is, I think you will get some companies that will be a bit more reticent, particularly for this. A one-to-one meeting works. This is fine. It's like having a chat with somebody down the pub. Not quite as tasty, but it's not bad, right? So that'll happen. But the more speculative stuff that I'm excited about is that we will start to think about what things like, and I've written them now, key workers, silo workers.
Yeah.
Who's more important? Yeah. Is it the spreadsheet jockey getting paid 150 grand a year, or the nurse getting paid 30 grand a year?
That's always been a debate, hasn't it? It's always been a debate, that one.
And I think that won't happen.
Yeah.
Like I would like to happen. But I think we will start to make demands of our governments and our companies to recognise some of the more key skills. I think that's one thing.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I said this earlier, and it's very much linked, is this return on humanity thing. I was talking to a friend of mine, Ben, yesterday, and he's an employee engagement, employee experience expert.
Yeah.
And what he said to me was, and I thought it was really insightful, despite all their flaws, employee engagement surveys are going to continue. For the next 5 years, one of the questions really needs to be, how did your company cope with COVID, and how is it responding since?
Yeah.
Because you've got companies like, and I'm so sad about this, Virgin.
Yep.
And I'm not so sad about this, Witherspoons.
Yep.
Who have potentially committed commercial suicide in the last 3 weeks. Yeah. And I think people are going to be much more wary of that. You know, they're going to say, wait a minute, during COVID, you just laid us all off. You just did this, you just did, you know, and I think that could really create a new work order. I think it's going to have an impact.
Good Scott.
It's going to have an impact. I mean, and then linked to that, and the other thing that I think, again, there's a balance. It's a conflict. It's a paradox. I like paradox. When we go out shopping these days, and increasingly, and it's coming, and I've seen some of the technology that's coming, it's amazing. We have individualization of everything. So you can go and now get a coffee with your picture on it, or your name on it, or, you know, they can print it.
Yeah.
I was speaking at a conference in Vienna last year, and there was a guy there. He was showing us how pizza printers are going to work.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to buy a pizza printer, and it's going to be in your house. You can print a Domino's pizza off at home. And this is all happening, right? This is all happening. But then we go into work, and we expect people to put up with collective bargaining and all being in the same job scales. It's just not going to work. And I think COVID has focused us on that. You know, we have different requirements. So you've got people sitting at home right now, like you and me. And I mean, you and I are used to this. You know, I'm not strange to working on my own. I'm sure you're not either. But there are other people are really struggling with it.
Yeah.
You know, and to say to them, Zoom's the answer. No, it's no. You know, so I think that is going to be a really interesting development to watch in the next few years.
I'll be honest, Scott. You know, like, obviously listening to your feedback on the workplace of the future and just your opinions, it's really inspiring me. And I'll be honest, I was one of these businesses that did fling his head in the sand at the start of all this, because I didn't quite understand how to take it. I made a decision 3 years ago not to watch the news or all that type of stuff, but I just got glued to it, and I just felt my whole well-being go downhill very quickly just because I couldn't get away from what was going on in the public domains of media. But I realised I need to shift myself from that and just focus on just try to be diversified, you know, in what your offer is or what your service is, and engage with good connections, people that really want to lift each other up, you know, having that more humanity impact with one another, rather than, it doesn't have to be the whole world, but just being able to help that one other person, or even a couple of people. You know, it makes a real difference in someone's lives. It could just be the trigger point. It takes them from being in a shit place to being in a better place.
You ever seen the film Interstellar?
Yes, I have. Yes.
There's a line in that, the bad guy, they're having an argument, and he says, empathy rarely stretches beyond the line of sight.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good.
Social media, COVID, Zoom is extending their line of sight.
Yep.
That's bloody brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, you know, again, I wish I'd written that. I didn't, but good God, you know, it's just that is exciting.
It is. It is. Can I ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind? I'm just going to go off track here, Scott, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So in the next 10 years, how do you see the workplace? What do you think it will be like in the next 10 years?
That's such a big question. I'll tell you what it's not going to be like.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like cattle farms, like open plan offices and all the rest of it. Equally, it's not going to be ping pong tables and vending machines, because they're just as bad as each other.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't really get that, to be honest.
No, it's what companies are doing. And even the campus model that you get from, Amazon and Microsoft. I've worked at both Amazon and Microsoft, and people are just as disenfranchised there as they are anywhere else. I think, and this isn't really good news, I think it'll just be more of the same. You'll get there's never going to be a perfect model, but I think we need to move further away from the command and control approach to scalable efficiency. So for example, one of the things I've seen very rarely in my career, but I've seen it in a few companies, 2 or 3, literally a handful, is where rank is only one dimension in how a business operates.
Yeah.
The other dimension is capability. And I remember when I first went to consulting, I was an HR director, and I had, loads of people working for me in a big famous company and all the rest of it. I went into consulting, they doubled my salary, and I went straight to the bottom of the pile.
Wow.
It was like, whoa, your ego takes a massive hit.
Yep.
And you're suddenly writing job descriptions, or you're writing person specs, or you're doing the stuff you would give to, Hibs fans.
Great show.
Yeah. And so it's great I can do that with a Scots guy. Anyway, but you know what I mean? Sorry, Hibs fans. But, you can really go, and I'm a Hearts fan, I can't say anything. I'm not saying anything about anything.
That's all, by the way.
Yeah. No, that's another podcast. Anyway, but then suddenly you discover, or rather rediscover, what your real expertise is in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what rank you are. You become the guy that leads the project. So you're always the guy at the top of the triangle. Now, I would love to think we could have more of that in our companies, because the number of times you get bad decisions being made by people that don't understand what they're making decisions about is unbelievable.
Yeah, I think that happens all the time, to be fair.
It does.
Do you know, if I've been honest, Scott, I've been like harping on, certainly at a local level in my networks, about the use of technology and video and so forth.
Yeah.
And obviously this is, I feel I've been an early adopter of tech, but this is now forcing people to change. And it's a bit going back to what we said earlier about that reptilian side of the brain, when you're forcing somebody into either fight or flight. I think that's quite dangerous as well, because when it goes back to when it goes back to when we're interacting as human beings, how's people going to pick up technology then? What is going to happen?
Yeah, well, I find
that quite curious.
I'm curious about that as well, and there will be,
because what's going to happen? This will happen, Scott. I bet you the money. You'll be sitting in a train. Me and you'll have our laptops open, and we'll be having a Zoom call.
Yeah.
Just sitting there.
I'm at the point now that I'm sick of Zoom. I one-to-one, I actually like one-to. I have no issue with this.
It's a great Scottish word, by the way. There's a few Zoomers,
I haven't heard that for years. But I think this works. This works. But when you get any more than 5 or 6 people on, it just deteriorates. And with all these new experts, how they've pivoted their business, and I don't blame them for that. They're just trying to find a way to make money, and that's okay. But the reality is that it doesn't work. And therefore, we're going to have to think deeper and harder about how we use technology. Yes, is the answer to your question. We are going to have to think about it a lot more.
Oh, fantastic. Now, what I've done with previous speakers, Scott, if you wouldn't mind, I just want to conclude and first of all say thank you very much for your insights. And I just love this piece on Workplace of the Future. And I certainly will be sending this information out to a lot of my peers and businesses that will find great value in this. My question is, what 3 books would you recommend? I've asked all interviewees the same question. What 3 books would you recommend?
That's a question that I really like, but one that I find very difficult to answer.
It's all right.
I'll give you 3 very different books.
Go for it.
And I'll show you them. Right. I would probably start with my hero, a guy called Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
And this book, and it's called The Demon Haunted World. Carl Sagan, for those of the people who don't know him, he's passed now, but Carl Sagan spoke in Glasgow in 1985 when I was at university, and I missed it.
Oh, no.
But I heard about it, and he's the guy who came up with the phrase "pale blue dot."
Wow.
And TV show Cosmos, and he talks about a danger, and that danger was that we'll become a society that's run on technology and engineering that no one understands, and that is where we are right now.
Absolutely, 100%.
So my God, was he a futurist? An incredible futurist. Second one,
for that,
every day, I'm a 30-year meditator, and I read 3 books every morning, one page and 3 books every morning, and one of those books is this. It's called The Daily Stoic.
Oh, I've not heard of that. And
the Stoics are a 3,000-year-old thinking group, which amazing. And one of the nuggets, nearly every day I get this from this book. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
One of the best quotes, and most what I call a generative quote. It's not just a quote like a Tony Robbins quote. It's not like that. It's this. This is one of the quotes I got from there. Opinions are like nails. The harder you hit them, the deeper inside they go.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean...
I think I need to go and lie down, Scott. Bear with me.
So that's the second one. Then the third one, I don't know. What would I choose? I'll tell you what I would choose, just out of storytelling, because I think storytelling is just so important. And it's my foundation for how I do my speaking and everything else.
Yeah.
There's a chap who's also now passed. He died 2 years ago. A chap called Oliver Sacks.
Yep.
And Oliver has written many books, including The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, Musicology, etc. But he wrote a book that they made him into a movie called Awakenings. It was Robert De Niro and Robin Williams.
Yep.
If you want to know about storytelling and how to ask a beautiful question, read that book. That's
a great recommendation. Thank you so much. And I've not really done this, Scott, on the previous episodes, but I feel compelled to do so. Have you ever read The Daily Drucker?
I know Drucker's work, but I've not read the daily one, no.
So I've got a bit of story with that, Scott. I received a copy from a gentleman many moons ago, and it's the type of book where you read one page and you need to lie down. You read a page and you need to lie down.
Right.
It's incredibly deep, thoughtful, and quite a spiritual journey.
Right.
So that's probably the one I'd recommend is The Daily Drucker by Peter Drucker.
Peter Drucker was a very interesting man.
He was.
Very interesting man.
Okay, Scott, well, listen, just before we finish this episode, where can people find you and where can you tap into your work? Because I'm sure the listeners on the podcast today would love to do that.
Thank you. There's three main main platforms. One is I'm part of a movement called the Whole Man Academy. And I know you've had Anthony Asprey on before. So if you Google thewholemanacademy.com, they can see a lot of the work that I do there. I'm the creative director for the Whole Man Academy. So there's that place. I do most of my thinking or most of my public thinking on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I know that's not particularly trendy, but Twitter is the platform for information and thinking. So if you look up at Scott_McArthur, you'll find me there.
Yep.
And then the final place that is developing at the moment for me is at my YouTube channel. And that would be Scott McArthur Employee Experience. And if you go in there, I'm working very hard with that at the moment with our film company, and we're producing little sort of espresso shots of thinking for people to, a bit like what we've done today. You just take one subject and I talk about it for 2 or 3 minutes, and that's developing a nice following at the moment. So if people would like to go in there and interact and subscribe, I'd be delighted.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what I will do, Scott, when we get these things live, I'll send all the links as well.
Thank you.
Just to help the listeners out on that journey, okay? So I just want to say thank you very much for your time today. I really, really appreciated it. Enjoyed our chat. And I look forward to seeing you soon on our next episode. Maybe talk about the Hearts.
Thanks, Ross. Looking up at the rest of the football world.
Always good to look up and start somewhere.
Yeah, got to start. We've been there before, Ross. We've been there before.
Hey, Scott, well, thank you for your time. That was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You've been listening to the Recruitment Mindset Podcast with Ross Cunningham. Please be sure to subscribe and share. and Ross will look forward to serving you in the next episode. Until then, take care and be great. Here's wishing you amazing success.